beautiful friends. So today is Thursday, the 31st of December, and it is New Year's Eve. So happy New Year's Eve. I hope you are ready for the new year. Hope you are prepared. I am somewhat prepared. It doesn't need to be perfect, as long as you're making progress to move towards doing things. Anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling. So today I wanted to sit down and I'm actually gonna film two videos, but this video that I'm going to film right now is going to be my wrap up of my top favorite books of this year. So I'm gonna be talking about 10 books that I absolutely loved in 2020. I wanna just say how proud of myself I am for the amount of books that I read this year and the fact that I really just got back into loving books again and loving reading again and got into like a good flow of reading again. And I'm just really proud of myself for getting to this place again because after I had my daughter, I wasn't really reading so much, and that was almost 5 years ago. So it's been a journey, but I am very happy to be reading again, and I really don't think anything is gonna derail me from what I'm doing right now because I've just allowed myself so much more freedom when it comes to like what I'm reading and how I'm reading it, and just like releasing all of the expectations that I was holding for myself for like, I need to be reading, you know, parenting books, I need to be reading, you know, spirituality books, I need to be reading, you know, all of these books that I think I should be reading, and just really going with what I actually want to be reading. Also, I have my incense burning, so if you see smoke, I can see it very clearly because I have my light on, but I don't know if the camera's actually taking it in, but if you see smoke, just trying to get the vibes going here. So the first book that I loved in 2020 was Fiber Fueled. If you know anything about me, you would know that I have dealt with IBS and digestive issues for like 10 years now, and has really created a very dysfunctional relationship with food, which I already had a dysfunctional relationship with food anyway, and then on top of it I started having digestive issues. So this book was really eye-opening for me because it was a lot of information that I hadn't really heard before. I mean, there were all the basic things of like, hey, eat more fruits and vegetables. I'm a vegan, so I tend to lean towards being more like whole foods, plant-based anyway, but being that I have had digestive issues for so long, I have listened to a lot of the things that the internet has told me about IBS and things that help with it, which is like removing beans, removing high fiber foods, removing certain grains, basically removing all of the things that trigger you until you have a very, 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 very tiny list of foods that are safe. And it's very reminiscent of disordered eating. It's very, it's very triggering for me because, like I said, I have dealt with disordered eating throughout my life. And so I got to a point where I was just like, I need to do something. I'm not sure what, but I need to do something. I'm open to trying mostly anything as long as it, you know, stays along the lines of what I am morally and ethically wanting to do. And so I had heard about this book from a YouTuber that I absolutely love. She's one of my favorite vegan YouTubers. She hasn't put up videos in a long time, but she was talking about this book when it first was released and saying how amazing it was, and I was like, I'm gonna do that, because despite the fact that all of these things were triggering symptoms in my body, I still wanted to be able to eat them, because not even just because of the fact that like, oh, this will taste good, but because of the fact that like having variety in your diet is so important to your digestive system. And it's so important to like your mental health as well, not being super restrictive of the things that you can and can't be eating. My mind was a little bit blown by a lot of the information that was in it, and I pretty much recommend it to everyone because it shifted my whole perspective of the way that I look at food in general, but specifically fiber itself in relation to me having IBS, you can slowly get used to eating, you know, a wide variety of fruits and vegetables again, because it's very important. Or not even just fruits and vegetables, but fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, all that jazz. So yeah, it was really beneficial to me. And I love following him on Instagram too, because he's actually kind of funny sometimes, and he just gives really good advice. So if there's anybody that I trust when it comes to nutrition information, he is definitely one of those people. And yeah, I would highly suggest everyone to check out that book. Okay, so I'm actually gonna pair these two together because they're by the same author, Homegoing and Transcendent Kingdom. So I read Homegoing first. I absolutely loved it. I absolutely fell in love with the story. Basically, it is told from multiple points of view of essentially a line in a family. So there are two main characters where basically you are following where their families end up and their lineage ends up, and how they get to a certain point, and how they end up coming back together. What I can say is that this was like the perfect book that I needed to read at that time. And I've read a lot of books like this. I feel like a couple of books on this list kind of reiterated this feeling of like wanting to know my lineage, wanting to know my ancestry, wanting to get in touch again with where I come from, because everything is everything, and everything connects back to a certain specific point, and everything connects back to you. And so I think it was just really eye-opening to me to realize that I am literally, you know, the manifestation of my ancestors, and the manifestation of, you know, the decisions that they made in order to get me to this place where I am right now, and to be able to be in a place where I can connect with them and honor them during this experience called life. And Transcendent Kingdom is following the main character, who is of Ghanaian descent, I believe, and she is a, God, I don't remember because I haven't read it in so long, but she's like a scientist. She is doing an experiment essentially to find the common thread of where like trauma and grief and addiction connects and comes from when it comes to like her family and her family experiences. I'm probably describing that terribly. But basically she had a brother who ended up dying from a drug overdose when she was younger, and her mom kind of spirals into this depression, and she's basically trying to figure out like how her brother got to that place, how her mother got to that place, and why, like scientifically, why we make the decisions that we do. It was a really interesting, informative, and eye-opening look at growing up in the church, especially for me personally, because I did grow up in a Christian church environment. There were a lot of very familiar things in the stories that she was telling, and the experience that she was having. And it was very validating to see someone else who had dealt with those things, and who had felt certain things or thought certain things, or, you know, just questioned where they were at in life, and also the ways that spirituality and religion can connect with science, and how they can coexist, and if they can coexist at all. It was a lot in one book, and I feel like that's what this author does so well, is put a lot in one book, but manages to make it so compelling and so beautiful and so like entertaining while still ripping your heart out, still making you think, and still being super impactful for you. Next book is kind of a fun one. So this is Anna K, and this is a retelling of Anna Karenina. fun fact, I'll talk about this in my next video, which is going to be my books that I want to read in 2021, but my goal is actually to read Anna Karenina. I'm really scared to read Anna Karenina, I'm not gonna lie, because that's a hefty book. That's a thick book. But I figured I'd kind of like dip my toe into it a little bit by reading this contemporary YA, is it YA? I believe it's YA, kind of rendition of Anna Karenina, told from the perspective of Anna Kay. And not just Anna Kay, it's actually told from her perspective and her brother's perspective. Another girl, another guy, and then another girl. I read this so long ago, so I don't really remember. It started out a little bit slow when I started reading it, but once it got into the magic of the story and shit started happening, and it felt very like Gossip Girl-ish to me, maybe because it was set in New York. I loved the diversity in the book itself. It was like, I loved it. I haven't read Anna Karenina. I have seen the movie, but I didn't really remember what happened in the movie. So when what happened, I was surprised. And the way that they went about it in this book was just kind of perfect. And I feel like if I had been reading books like this when I was a teen, instead of reading Gossip Girl, I probably would have been just as happy, to be perfectly honest, but I feel like I would have gotten a little bit more, I don't know, like creative substance from my books. But you know, that's neither here nor there. The next book that I want to talk about is The Song of Achilles. Last year in 2019, I read Circe by Madeline Miller, by the same author. And that was absolutely beautiful. Absolutely loved it. I'm so glad that I bought it because it looks so fucking good on my bookshelf. And it's one of the few books that I actually bought. I'm probably going to buy Song of Achilles because I want to have it near me in my vicinity. And it's a beautiful book. And it's just like, it's a beautiful book like aesthetically, and it's a beautiful book just in general. So basically this is the story of Achilles and his good friend I cannot pronounce this. Patroclus? But we all know they ain't friends. No, I don't think so. Like, no. It broke my heart into a million pieces. But it also gave me so much life and so much hope. And like, it took me on a ride that I wasn't expecting, but I was so happy to be on. It was a story of two boys coming of age together and learning about themselves and their relationship and how they show up in the world as individuals, but also together, and the evolution of that. And then it was also about them being a part of this war and how they both kind of played completely different roles in it, for each other and for the war itself. And honestly, it was like one of the few books that I really enjoyed, like the war sequences. These war scenes were actually really good and kept me on my toes, and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. Wow, just thinking about it makes me want to read it again. But it's an absolutely beautiful book. It's a love story, and it makes me so happy inside, and it was definitely a top favorite book for me this year. Next book I'm going to talk about is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This book was extremely hyped, like hyped to the heavens. And it definitely lived up to the hype. I was not expecting for it to be so good. Basically, it is about a woman who was an actress. Her name is Evelyn Hugo, of course. And it is about her, basically it's about her life story and how she ended up marrying 7 husbands and how she made those decisions and the course of her kind of starting out her career as an actress, and starting out with her first husband and kind of ending her career. It was almost like watching a movie. It it was almost like watching one of those really good like Judy Garland documentaries or whatever, because I fucking love those. Like I used to be, I vividly remember like watching the PBS documentaries or whatever of Judy Garland, because I used to be fucking obsessed with her. And it reminded me of that so much, to where it was like, it's not necessarily watching a character playing Judy Garland or Evelyn Hugo. And like there was like a level of separation to a certain extent. Anyway, I'm getting too technical, but oh man, this story took me on a ride, because she felt so real. Like she was not perfect by any means with any of the decisions that she was making. And yet you can feel her heart so much, and you can see why she would make certain decisions. And I just, it was such a good book. And there was like, I guess you could say it was like a plot twist. I know there's kind of a debate on whether or not people consider this as a twist, but I didn't know about it going into it, and I was glad that I didn't know about it. So I'm just not gonna say it, because I want people to also be surprised by it. But there is a twist, kind of, and I saw it coming as I was reading it, but I didn't realize it when I started reading it, you know, does that make any sense? And I was pleasantly surprised, very pleasantly surprised. And then there was like another twist, and I was like, what are you doing to me? I cried reading this book for many reasons. But yeah. So it was about her life, and also drawing parallels between her and the woman who's interviewing her as well. So that was really interesting. It was so good. It was such a good book. Definitely lived up to the hype. I love the cover. I'm gonna need to buy it eventually, because I just want to have it on my bookshelf. So I'm gonna go ahead and go into the next book that was one of my favorites for 2020, and that would be Children of Blood and Bone. What I love so much about this story is that basically it was like a retelling of the way the actual world is, and being able to represent the things that we have dealt with as Black people in this country in a fantastical way, essentially. I absolutely love this story. It was something that I really would have appreciated a lot to read as I was growing up, as a child. This definitely would have been a series that I would have followed so hardcore. I'm just really appreciative of the fact that these things exist and these stories exist for us now, because that definitely wasn't something that I experienced as I was growing up. I did not see Black main characters that were going on adventures and doing magic and stuff like that as I was growing up. So being able to experience this now and know that I'm going to be able to get these books for my own daughter / children is really helpful for me, because representation is important. And this was another one of those books like Homegoing that really reiterated the fact to me that connecting with my ancestors is so important, and being able to honor them and acknowledge all that they have done to bring me to this place, and the way that it's really vital that we do so. And that's a lot of what the main character experiences throughout her journey, is that it is so important to our self-actualization, our self-identity, to be able to connect with our lineage, because we can't connect with who we are now and us in our current physical reality until we connect with, you know, what is also within us that brought us to this place. It was very powerful story for me. I feel like a lot of people would just read it as kind of like a fun fantasy story and not experience such a profound and like almost like visceral reaction to it, because I did definitely cry at very many times, because it just made me feel so seen. It made me feel so seen. The next book would have to be The Silence of Bones. So this is set in the 1800s in Korea, and this is from the perspective of a girl who is essentially an indentured servant to the police force, I guess you could say there. So they're living in a time basically where the men are not allowed to have any kind of physical contact with any woman whatsoever. So if someone dies, or if someone is murdered, or there's a body or something that they have to see or deal with, they have to have these indentured servants, which are females who basically do the dirty work for them. You basically are following the journey of the main character and her life of being an indentured servant to this one specific person on the police force. I don't think that's what they're called, but like that's all I can think of right now. Basically, while all this is happening, there is a kind of like murder mystery element that's going on, and also a situation of her kind of trying to reconnect with her family, specifically her brother, because she hasn't seen him in so long because of certain events. And there's a lot going on in this book. I feel like this is a running theme with a lot of books that I really enjoy, is that there is a lot of character development, plot development, and world building in not a super long book, because my attention span cannot handle that sometimes. And it takes a really good author to be able to keep me really engrossed in a world and in a book and in a character, if it is a really long book. So I feel like this author did it really well. It taught me a lot about the time, that the period that, you know, this story was told from, because I had no idea about it. If you know anything about me, you know I love K-pop and I love K-dramas and stuff like that, but I don't actually know any of the history and stuff of Korea. And so it was really interesting to learn about some of those things and what was going on during that time. I do remember that it was absolutely a beautiful book, and it took me on a ride that I wasn't really expecting, because I was expecting like the murder mystery kind of thrillerish-y aspect of it, but there was so much heart in it as well, and I think that's really where the magic was. I know I just said that I really like small books that pack a huge punch, but this was a big book that packed a huge punch. This is The Poppy War. This is again kind of a cult classic right now as far as like fantasy books. This is following the main character of Rin, and she is living in essentially poverty. She's living in a terrible place with terrible people, and she wants to fucking get the fuck out. And so she ends up taking this test to go to this school, and she ends up acing the test because she's that bitch. And she goes and ends up being at the school, this like elite school for training for a lot of different things, but specifically related to this war that's going on in their world. And so she goes there, and everyone treats her like shit because of her skin color and because of her background and because of her lack of money and all this bullshit, and it's fucking annoying as hell. But I love the school setting because it makes me really happy inside. I'm sorry, what is wrong with me? This was like 3 different books in one book, because I feel like the first book was like the school setting going on, learning, people being fucking assholes, and then the next part was like another section of like the school setting, but it was a little bit different. I can't really say how it was different, but she was getting more of like a mentorship situation, I guess, and that was I love that section. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then the last section was full-fledged war. I felt like I just was seeing a girl who was just doing the best that she fucking could with what she had, and doing her best to be the best, essentially. And also coming to terms with all of these things in the world that she had no idea about, and being grossly unprepared for so many different things. But also like handling things pretty damn well, if I must say myself. I've been putting off reading the second one because I I don't want it to end. And I know once I read the second book, I'm like, I know once I read the second book, I'm gonna need to read the next one, and then I'm like, it's over, that's it. And I don't know if I'm ready for that, so. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to, especially, I'll probably finish the whole series in this upcoming year, but 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved it, if you couldn't tell already. The last book that I wanted to talk about is the 5th season. Again, this is another book that is kind of like God tier status of booktube and like book world in general, I feel like. And I was also really hesitant to start this one for some reason. I don't know if I said that about the Poppy War, but I was hesitant to start it because I wasn't sure whether I was gonna like, but it did, and I was not disappointed whatsoever. So basically this is told from mainly focusing on one main character, and she is a mother, and she has come home to find out that her son has been brutally murdered by her husband, and her daughter has been kidnapped by him. So basically she is going on this journey of trying to find that motherfucker and kill him. Maybe not kill him, just like, you know, rough him up a little bit. It's also following 2 other characters who are kind of they're all at very different stages in their life, which I really liked because being able to see different perspectives was really interesting. Probably one of my favorite magic systems ever. It is, I heard someone talking about this, so I think I know how to describe it. It's like they're connected to the tectonic plates. I don't know math, I don't know science. Origins, and they are connected, they're able to connect with the earth and like move the tectonic plates or something like that. But the reason why it's called the 5th season is because they're basically these catastrophic natural disasters that keep happening. Like there's one where there's like lava and shit everywhere. There's like one where everyone's going crazy. And basically this starts out with, you know, the main character, and you're following her on her journey, but also they're in the midst of a season happening. So there's a lot of layers to this book, not only having the, you know, different perspectives that we're looking at, but also the fact that this shit is going on in the world all at the same time. And it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, but it is so good. It wasn't reminiscent of the Poppy War, but it was one of those books that it was like really big, so I was really intimidated. I'm sorry. I was intimidated by its size. But once I actually tackled it, it was totally fine because it just like pulled me in and didn't let me go. And I was like, it's fine, I'll stay here. Like, we can stay here together and go on this journey. And also it's another, like the Poppy War. I haven't read the next one, even though I desperately want to, because I don't want it to end. Because that'll make me sad. But so good. There's so much diversity, not only in the characters' like personalities and stuff, but also like sexuality diversity, racial diversity, all that shit. And it really just, it was exactly what I wanted and exactly what I needed, and was really my kind of book. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this year has been rough. That's only the tip of the iceberg. But I feel like for most of us, it's been very, very transformative, and I try to be that annoying asshole that tries to find positives and lessons in the experiences that we're having, because that's really all you can do in order to keep moving forward. And I have gained so much from this year, even though I have lost a lot as well. I'm coming out a completely different person, and I'm excited to share some more things with you guys in the future. I'm excited for more books that we'll be reading this upcoming year, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be filming soon my top 21 books that I want to read in 2021. And yeah, like I said, leave down below your favorite book from 2020, and if you would like to, if you watch this whole video, you can leave down below a book that you're excited to read in this upcoming year. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys later. I hope you're finding joy in whatever way it is that you can and staying safe. I love you.